Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Zwiftcast, the community podcast from Zwift. I'm your host, Rebecca Charlton, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the first of our two very special Watch the Femmes episodes in celebration of Women's History Month. Now, alongside me is my co-host, Dave Towle, and joining us to welcome regular listeners as well as new ones is Zwift Director of Women's Strategy, Kate Veronneau. First off, a special shout out to everyone who's listening along with our Zwiftcast rides to unlock the exclusive Watch the Femmes headphones. We hope you'll continue to join us on the journey every fortnight, where you can expect brilliant community stories, star rider interviews, and news from the wonderful world of Zwift. Coming up today, we look forward to Paris-Roubaix Femmes Avec Zwift and the Tour de France Femmes Avec Zwift 2025. We bring you all the latest news, including the return of Zwift Games this month. And the Wheeltalk Podcast crew pop in to talk Zwift Cycling and motherhood. That's Abby, Mickey, Loren, Rowney and Gracie, Elvin. They'll be joining us later. All this and more, but first, welcome, Kate. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Well, we have Zwift Games fast approaching. Dave, you're very much the man in the know on this one. It's going to be a biggie this year, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of excitement. It's a huge part of Zwift Spring, that's for sure. So to break it down for you, GCN's going to have a fantastic broadcast again. There'll be 3 different days of racing that'll have 5 stages packed into them. It really breaks down 2 sprint stages to start in the first day of racing. Second day of racing is kind of the climbing day. I've had a chance to ride all 5 stages, actually, as anybody would. They're available right now online. And the final stage, they call it a queen, but the queen must be a monster, Rebecca, because it is a really tough day. So that'll just be a one standalone day of racing to wrap up the Zwift Games. And so there's a duality to this where you've got the participation of, as I said, it could be 100,000 people this year getting involved in racing at all the different levels. They can it's much like Z racing, that you have multiple opportunities to better your stage time, but getting in the right group is key. We've learned that through the years, is that figuring out which the fast group will be and then really throwing down that is the best way to get your GC time. So it really is a great way to have elite racing. And I do know that as we record this, they have just had a qualifying race, Rebecca. It's super exciting because there's 5 riders that'll punch their ticket to be involved with the Zwift Games. Now, 50 riders from the Zwift World Series that we stopped after the 4th race. Well, the top 50, they're transferring into Zwift Games. And then there's 5 wildcard men and women. So it'll be 60 athletes that compete. Yes, it all kicks off on March 3rd. That's when it'll really be week by week. There is a makeup week at the very end if you didn't have a chance to get one of the stages under your belt. But watch the elite racing on GCN. It's going to be absolutely incredible. That's the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd of March.
Right on.
And I know a lot of people, of course, already be listening in on the podcast ride today. But for anyone that hasn't heard about this, there's an exclusive unlock, isn't there, Kate?
Yeah, we've got some great events going on in March that are both women-focused and open to everyone to elevate and celebrate women. So on the weekend of International Women's Day, which is March 8th, so the 7th, 8th, and 9th, we'll actually have women's-only rides, celebrating and connecting the women's community on Zwift every hour on the hour. A whole bunch of incredible special guest leaders from our community, from the Pro Peloton, ex-pros, VIPs will be leading really nice social rides. And on those events, you can unlock an exclusive sneak peek at the 2025 Paris-Roubaix Femmes Avec Zwift cap in game. So for that weekend, women will have the chance to do an early unlock of that cap. But then the rest of the month, we're going to be featuring the Zwiftcast on podcast rides, telling stories from the women's peloton and sharing some of the wonderful women in our community. So those rides will be happening March 10th through 17th. is the first one, every hour on the hour, and March 24th through 31st. So there's a week and then a week off and then another week, every hour on the hour. Those are co-ed rides, and there's a very special unlock, Watch the Femmes headphones. So I think that'll be really fun to be riding along, see everybody with those fun, big, podcast headphones on and really connecting with the incredible stories from our community. So.
Well, talking of cool unlocks, we also have the Zwift Big Spin, which just kicked off on March the 3rd. Now, it's the second edition of the popular prize-filled group ride series, and this year's theme is Ride, Spin, Win through the decades, with each week's ride and prize spinner themed after a different decade. So we've got kit from the 1970s, the 80s and 90s, and the 2000s. On top of stage-exclusive unlocks, you can win the groovy time trial wheel set, the Big Spin headphones, and the sticker skate helmet on any stage. And there's a chance to spin for the grand prize, which is the BMX Bandit bike. Each time you complete a Zwift Big Spin route, the spinner will pop up to give you a prize. And if it lands on one that you've already won, I believe you'll get a 15,000 drops bonus. I absolutely love this.
Yeah, I'm stuck somewhere between the 80s and the 90s because I love 80s music. I love some of the 80s style, but that early 90s flow colors and there's some great design in the 90s, and that's kind of where some of my more formative years. So.
Do you know what? I need to see photos, Kate, because you are genuinely the most stylish woman I know. And I can only imagine your style. And I love the fact that now you go in, well, I don't know if I do love it because I go into the shops now and 90s fashion is so back. I remember saying to my mum, oh, I can't believe fashion's come back for the second time. And now it's happening to me. Dave, what's your decade?
I feel obligated to go with the 70s, to tell you the truth. I love me some Allman Brothers, and I love me some BMX bikes, and that BMX Bandit bike. So I remember last year when Big Spin happened, the headphones were all the rage. People were going bananas for those. And it's certainly, I saw some folks talking about Zwift being a tool and a toy at the same time. This is the perfect example of that, because there is something that happens when people want to get something and their commitment to it, and it'll really get you back and showing up every day and riding. I think at one point Nathan was riding and spinning, because it's like Alpe de Zwift when you finish, right? And I have yet to get the lightweight wheels, although I haven't really ridden. I just saw a guy rode up Alpe de Zwift 3,000 times in his life. Kate, huh? So he's probably, he's doubled down on every prize over and over and over again. But there's some that are very, very elusive. And I have a feeling that BMX Bandit bike, which I assume is coming out of the 70s, that would certainly track with that for sure. The thing I'm glad you ladies aren't asking about, because I don't think either of you were around in the 70s, but I do think that the 80s has a thing called a paper hat. And if you asked me, well, I'm going to guess there aren't a lot of paper hats from the 80s that are still around, right? But what's a paper hat, Kate?
That's a great question. I actually have to look into this. What is a paper hat?
It's like the visor, isn't it, Dave? It looks like
okay. I guess, you know what, Rebecca, this is going to fall. Maybe it's a British thing. And America never really embraced the paper hat because of, well, you have rain there too. So I don't know, but it's a sun hat would probably be the logic.
Yeah, I feel like maybe, we need to look into this more. I mean, all I'm thinking about, Dave, is back in the 80s and during my childhood, you would go to like a fast food restaurant, like a pretty dire one, and you'd get excited because you would have like the paper visor.
Oh, we did that with like Burger King crowns, right, Kate?
Oh my gosh, Burger King crowns. Yep. That's definitely a big part of childhood.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, so were BMX bikes, I got to say, in the 70s and 80s for sure. But they really do an amazing job. Two of the biggest events that happen on Zwift are Big Spin and Zwift Games. One is a race, one is a ride. That's an ongoing joke. Is this a race or a ride? And there's always going to be that element in Big Spin events where it turns into a little bit of a Donnybrook at times, I would say. But there's no official results or anything like that. The goal is just to get there and spin and win your prize. And I really hope you see me soon in those earphones.
You're going to love them.
Right on.
Having had my second child a few weeks ago, the next segment is a topic very close to my heart. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Abby Mickey, Loren Rowney and Gracie Elvin, who will be familiar names as ex-pro World Tour riders and now reporters, podcasters and pivotal voices in the world of women's cycling and beyond. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for letting me steal you from the Wheeltalk Podcast onto the Zwiftcast. How are you all?
So good to be here. It's always nice to share the love, isn't it, girls?
Yeah, it's been a while, since, I haven't been on a podcast as like a guest of a podcast for, I don't know, a decade?
Yeah, I don't remember the last time that I was on a podcast that I didn't host. It's a really nice change of pace.
And Abby, well done for being here. You are breastfeeding, multitasking as we speak. And you and I have now managed to time 2 pregnancies to the same week, having the same due date. And I actually can't remember who texted who first saying, I've got some news.
It was me. I texted you and I was like, guess what? And you were like, no.
And I think I was like, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I'm like 10 weeks or whatever. And you were like, me too.
I don't know how we've done it. And the funny thing is that with the first ones, we didn't know each other yet. So we only found out like after the babies were born that our babies had the same due date. And we're both of them were over a week late. So we had like this really funny connection right off the bat. And then, yeah, I feel like we both had told each other that we were trying for a second at the same time. And then that was like why I was so excited to text you when it got kind of like far enough along that I was like, hey, I can start like telling close people. And yeah, I just was cracking up when you said we managed to time it exactly the same for a second time.
So I'm going to come to everyone on this because, of course, we're coming together today to talk about being mums, and we will get on to Zwift and cycling. But I think these are all very prevalent topics, actually. One being trying to multitask to the max, coming back to work. And Gracie, how quickly did you come back? Because, of course, you, to me, seem to be quite quickly back reporting on SBS, commentating, presenting, reporting. And that's no small feat when you have a small human to keep alive.
Oh, yeah, totally. And yeah, so I had my first baby in June of 24. So about 8.5 months now that he's grown, and it's just crazy how time flies. But I'd actually started a new job with my national sporting organization last March. So, you know, I'd only had like 3 or 4 months of working in that new job before the baby came. And when I was getting that job, I said, you do know I'm very pregnant. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure that out. And then stupidly in my mind, I'm like, well, I'd probably only need about 3 months off. And then I could start, because it's a remote job and it's only part-time. And I got to 3 months after having my little boy Noah in the blink of an eye. And I was definitely not ready to start work again. I felt like my brain fog hadn't lifted, and, you know, I was just wanting to enjoy it still. It was such a special time. So I was able to push that out a little bit for another few months, which was really good, and really grateful for that flexibility of that role. But in terms of the commentary work, that doesn't really wait for anyone. I had no pressure to come back. I've got an awesome boss at SBS. Kath Whelan is a remarkable person and an awesome leader in the team, and she's been supportive since even before I was pregnant. She knew that we were trying for a family and wanted to support me along that journey, no matter how that ended up looking in terms of my work commitments with them. So I never felt like my role in that team was threatened and that I would be punished as a female in the media to have a baby, because I think, yeah, that would it must be tough for a lot of women in any industry, but, you know, the media is just such a fast moving beast and you have to be relevant, I guess, you feel like you can get edged out pretty quickly. And I never felt like that. So I was really grateful to not feel like I had to rush back. But there were certainly opportunities there for me if I wanted them early on. So while I wasn't ready to start my other part-time job at 3 months postpartum, I was able to just go away for one weekend and commentate the World Championships at 3 months. So that was actually cool to be like, well, it's only 2 nights away, and it's something that it's fun and, you know, a little bit scary to leave your little baby at that age, but, you know, I've got great support around me. And first and foremost is my partner, Kimberly, who's, you know, another super mum. So I didn't feel like scared about leaving him at home or anything. And I didn't feel guilty either, because I knew that he would be fine and he probably wouldn't miss me, because they're so little at that stage that if they have milk and cuddles, they're fine. So that was a good experience. And then I got to do a little bit of work at home. I got to do a bit of video content work for the Tour de France Femmes. So that was also a great opportunity that was created for me to stay involved by Kath and the SBS team. So that was really cool to get dressed up. I did my hair and makeup and then sat in this very chair and did a 1 minute video of my hot take for the day. So for a video that was like literally a few minutes long, it took me about 2 hours to do that. And my mom or dad would come over, or Kimberly would be here, and they'd like look after Noah. So that was like a nice ease back into it. So it did seem like I came back quickly, and in some ways I did, much like the other two that you're going to hear their stories as well, just because of the industries that we're in. Like it's there's maybe not the pressure there per se to come back quickly, but it's one of those things where if you want to, you can, because it's somewhat flexible in some ways, not others. You know, you can't do everything because a race is happening when it's happening. But it's been cool to have some diverse work opportunities that have allowed me to come back and feel part of the world and carry that other version of myself as well as this new version of myself as a mother. So it's been a nice balance, but definitely something that I'm still figuring out how to balance.
Oh, I hear you on that. And I'm absolutely delighted to hear that you felt that you had that support around you and that you didn't feel the pressure, because I think it's something that is really important to talk about. And I know Abby will come onto it, because it's not only the postpartum, but that pressure to keep working in pregnancy and kind of whether or not you're putting that on yourself, I guess, if you have got the support around you. But Loren, how about your experience? Because you've had so much going on behind the scenes and you're just absolutely phenomenal at keeping afloat.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm living in Belgium, for those that don't know, and it's pretty normal that women here go back to work at 3 months. So when I first had my little boy, Harry, in 2021, I had to already return to work, I think, 15 weeks later or even less, because that's all we're given. And I was in a bit of a tricky situation where I think financially we probably could have afforded for me to stay home, but I felt this internal pressure that I had to go back to work because I felt like I was only really getting started in my career that year, which is a crazy thought, considering like I stopped bike racing at the start of 2017. But for me, it was just years of like scrambling to figure out who I was, what I wanted to do, living in a foreign country where it was just completely different environment to Girona in Spain, where I'd lived before, or the Gold Coast in Australia. So I was really lost for years, and then it felt like I'd finally figured out a good place for me and a right direction with my current work that I do with the International Mountain Biking Association. So it's trail advocacy work. And so when my boss was like, no pressure, I still felt the pressure and I knew he needed me to come back. So I did. I just jumped straight into full-time work with a 3-month-old baby. And we were doing the juggle, my husband and I, because we both work full-time. And it wasn't until, I think, 2022, I completely burnt out at the end of the year. I had to take a month off work and started working with a psychologist, and we unpacked a lot of things and realized that, I probably didn't give myself enough time. And on top of that, I'd taken a gig with Australian Cycling to co-DS the women's elite team that year. So I was really busy, and I'm a person who needs to be busy and do lots of different things because I'm sure I'm undiagnosed ADHD. And so I can't, I really struggle to focus on singular tasks. So I need to have lots of different things going on to keep me interested and engaged. And then, of course, I've got 2 little boys now. I had little Louis in January of 2024. But when I got pregnant with him in May of 23, I had a beautiful 9 weeks of knowing I was pregnant. And then my son got diagnosed with cancer. So that kind of threw a spanner in the works with everything. I really wanted to enjoy that second pregnancy because I knew it was going to be my last pregnancy. And I told myself at the start of that pregnancy, Hannes, I'm not going to work for 6 months. Like, I think I really want to at least go part-time or something because I just want to enjoy it and I don't want to be at the risk of burnout, as they call it here in Belgium, like I experienced in 2022. But of course, I was actually forced then to take time off work to care for my sick son. And then I returned to work part-time. So my husband and I juggled work and full-time care for 1.5 years. And yeah, I'm happy to say now Harry has finished treatment and now we're back in the juggle.
Thank you for sharing that. And I can only imagine what you've been through as a family. And I'm so, so pleased to hear that you've had some positive news now. You're absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, it's not easy at the best of times, keeping all those plates spinning. And I think it changes perspective, doesn't it, as well, massively, to think, right, this has gone from being the absolute priority to keep throwing myself into work to maybe not. And it is constantly evolving. Now, I'm going to move things on to cycling and Zwift as well, because I know we are all obviously massive Zwift addicts and definitely continue. Abby's got a bottle. Right on brand. Thank you, Abby. And we all continued in pregnancy. And I'd be really interested to hear from everybody how that looked for you in reality, because actually back to your point of things constantly changing, Gracie, is I didn't know what my first pregnancy or indeed second one would look like. And I kind of thought, I'm not going to be able to do anything. That was my preconception, and my misconception was I'm not going to be able to ride a bike. I'm not going to be able to work. I'm going to be too huge to do anything. And actually, I found that very pleasantly surprising that I could do so much more, which is why I want to shout about it, because I know it's such a different experience for everybody, but making the assumption that it's going to go one way or another never really wins out, because actually it is your journey and it is constantly changing. And Abby, we were doing the baby on board workouts and being very sensible, weren't we? And then I decided to take on the off the map challenge. And then you saw my Instagram story and then you were like, right, I'm now doing this epic stage up Wollongong Hill.
I was like, oh, if she can do it, I can do it. Let's do this. Heck yeah. And we were what, 2 weeks away from giving birth, 3 weeks away from giving birth? Like, it was right around the corner. And I was like mid off the map, and I was like, oh, this was a choice that I made.
Basically, we didn't manage to coordinate, did we? Because I'd started the stages before you, and I wasn't going to repeat them twice at that point, quite frankly. And I then saw on the companion app that Abby was doing this epic stage, and I was kind of messaging her going, oh yeah, I know that got really tough at that point. And I was like, egging you on, wasn't I? Like, come on, once you hit the climb portal, you've only got another hour. But then you absolutely smashed it. I mean, obviously there's a big difference in my ability and yours. But you were actually like nailing the stage as quick as if you weren't pregnant.
The only thing that saved me that particular stage that you didn't know about until I told you was the coffee break. Because I took a 3-minute rest. I let my rear end rest for 3 minutes. But I also, like, just full disclosure, I never updated my weight on Zwift. So I just left it. I was like, no one needs to know how much weight I've gained in pregnancy. And that includes Zwift. Zwift can just stay as is, and my power to weight ratio doesn't have to, will still go down, but my weight doesn't need to change. So the only reason that I went up the climb even remotely fast is because, according to Zwift, I was still pre-pregnant.
Oh, I was completely lying about my weight at that point. And I have been really, because if you look at my data, anyone that would care to actually bother to go on my Zwift profile would have seen that I definitely was not at pregnancy weight whatsoever.
With my first pregnancy, actually both children sat really low. So I got to a point where I couldn't sit on the bike anymore. I think before 30 weeks, it was just too uncomfortable. So I honestly just walked a lot. I was running a lot more a few years ago, but I didn't run through pregnancy because it just didn't feel right for me. So I stopped with the running. I Zwifted. I did some riding outside, but I did a ton of Pilates and yoga and walks with my dog, actually during both pregnancies. And Zwift for me has been, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but the postpartum, it's been such an important part of my postpartum journey. It was great in the pregnancy, but I feel like I just have gone so hard with sport my whole life that during pregnancy I felt like it was the one time I could just let myself off the hook. And I really did. I think I relaxed the most I've ever done during my pregnancy with Harry. And then with Louis, I Zwifted way more actually during that pregnancy because it was just such a stressful time in my life. It was, one, so convenient to have the Zwift bike at home, and just be able to jump on it when Harry was doing his epic naps in the day, even if it was 30 minutes just to turn the legs over. But in the postpartum, I found now as well, juggling 2 kids, I just don't have the time to ride outdoors. I basically, my outdoor riding now is commuting with the kids to daycare and school, which I love. That is probably my favorite part of the day, is the school run. I get the fresh air. Harry loves it. He jumps in the bike trailer. But yeah, for me, I do all my cardio workouts on Zwift now. I aim for 2 times a week because that's all I can sort of afford to do at the moment. If I do 3, that's whoa, that's a lot. And I try to jump in the gym 1 to 2 times. But for me, it's been a key part of ensuring that my mental health is on track, because my husband even knows, he's oh, you haven't exercised for 2 days. I think you need to go jump on Zwift or do something, go to the gym. And I'll always prefer to Zwift over the gym because I don't love the gym. I just know it's good for me. So I do it. But Zwift, I genuinely enjoy, and just the fact that I don't have to go anywhere to do that activity is such a game changer.
I feel like for me, throughout both pregnancies and postpartum, riding Zwift, I mean, maybe postpartum was a little bit about kind of regaining my power a bit, like internal power, not leg power. But riding Zwift was more about mental health than it was about fitness. Keeping some level of fitness with the very far away thought that perhaps it would help with the delivery, which I think it absolutely did. That was 3% of it, but it was 97% of it was just trying to keep my head on track. Cause with Lila, I rode outside for the first 3 months, and then I was riding in California on my mountain bike and had a really bad crash, bad enough to get a concussion, and that scared the bejesus out of me. And I was like, okay, I'm not riding outside anymore. It's not worth it. And after that, I only rode Zwift and did a lot of walking. And with the second one, it was the same. I just, right from the gun, I was riding Zwift whenever I could, and I was a lot more tired the second time around, so I wasn't able to ride pretty much the whole first trimester. Yeah, for me it wasn't, I feel like when I got back on the bike after having Lila, I was like, oh, I would like to feel like myself again. But it wasn't so much feeling like myself in my body. It was more like feeling mentally stable, because pregnancy was really hard, losing that kind of control of your own body and not being able to like do what you want to do when you want to do it. And also just like watching my body change after so many years of being a professional athlete. And even before I was a professional cyclist or an amateur professional cyclist these days, I was still like a ski racer before that. And so I always looked a certain way. And during pregnancy, I was like watching my body change, and I was just like, what the hell? And my mental state was so bad. And I like, after Lila, the postpartum depression was bad enough that I had to go on antidepressants. And the only thing that really kept me sane was Zwift, like being able to have that thing that was kind of tethered to my past life in a way, but also like a little bit of time for myself, a little bit of freedom. And luckily, like Loren, my partner, knows that my mental health is tied to whether or not I can have a little bit of that time to exercise to myself. So he was really, really supportive of that always. And yeah, it just like, it was such a huge thing to keep me feeling a little bit happier, which was really, really hard, especially postpartum.
Thank you for sharing that, Abby, because that's something that I really wanted to touch upon with you three, actually, is the fact that I am very much the odd one out here, having never been a World Tour professional cyclist. And even for me, having been around racing environments growing up at a purely amateur level, I even felt like I was able to take the pressure off myself that, okay, I'm heavily pregnant. If I can do 20 minutes, that's fine. I'm doing something. I'm doing more than I would otherwise if I wasn't doing anything. And so I kind of felt like it changed my mental and physical approach to the sport and turned that pressure right off. But I can only imagine what that's like if you have, as you say, Abby, spent your whole life honing yourself as a professional to actually go through that change. How was that process for you, Gracie?
Yeah, a bit similar to the other two. Pregnancy was more confronting than I was expecting in a lot of ways, physically and mentally, even though it was something I was ready for and had been trying to do for a while. I wasn't in as good a fitness that I would normally be in by the time I got pregnant, because I'd done IVF on and off for about 12 months beforehand. And it didn't wreak havoc on me like it does for some people, but it still was a pretty crappy experience. And it did really mess with me mentally and physically in a lot of ways. And I really lost any routine in that 12 months. So by the time I did get pregnant, finally, I already felt so unfit. So you're not really supposed to get fitter when you're pregnant, but it's really important to move. And then, on the other side of things, as you've alluded to, like there's not a huge encouragement for women to do a lot of exercise anyway while they're pregnant. And I think we're only just seeing better literature and better role models now for that. But as athletes and being in a sport where we have seen good role models do that, I think the three of us weren't afraid to exercise. But for me, it was definitely about mental health as much as it was about my physical health. And for us, Zwift was just, convenient, a really nice way to switch off. For me, I love ticking off all of the courses. So I'm still making my way through every course, but unfortunately I've done all of the ones under 60 minutes. So now I actually have to do the longer ones. Just like watching Netflix and not feeling guilty about watching TV because you're still moving and the weather might be crap and you don't want to kit up and you're getting bigger so your kit doesn't fit and all of that stuff that gets harder with riding outside, apart from that anxiousness about riding outside. There's just a lot of ease to get on Zwift as well, and a lot of those barriers to getting to move are taken away. And when you get time poor for one reason or another, or you've already got a kid, like in Loren's case and Abby's case, like your time gets even less. So hopefully I can experience that at some point. But yeah, for me, it was, really helpful for my mental health.
Well, imagine for me, I'm older significantly than all of you. And I grew up when I was racing back in the day, just basically in the garage on a really clunky turbo trainer staring at a brick wall. That was like the level of technology with the little shifter thing on my handlebar that didn't even work when I needed to change gears. So for me, like, I'm forever grateful to Zwift for changing that experience. But I also went through and ticked off. My challenge was to tick off all the baby on board workouts. And then I kind of got to the end and started working through again. But what I love about Zwift's work with baby on board, is the fact that they haven't shied away from encouraging you to still exercise during pregnancy, because I think the easiest path would have been to say, oh, there's conflicting advice about whether you should exercise. Maybe we shouldn't go there. Maybe we just won't do a program for pregnant people. But they haven't shied away. They have done it. And it, for me, just made me feel so safe in the knowledge that this had been designed in a way that I wasn't going to overheat. And actually it taught me a lot about why interval training, although most people from the outside would be like, that's crazy, why are you doing intervals when you're pregnant? But actually it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because you're bringing your heart rate back down. You're not kind of progressively going up and up in a particular zone. You're just kind of like on and off. And I found that made me feel really, really safe doing those workouts. Did you all do baby on board as well?
I got so sick of the baby on board workouts that one day when Danny Rowe, who's one of the creators of the workouts, was commentating, I texted her co-commentator and was like, could you please ask Danny to make more of these workouts? Because I've done all of them 5 times over. But they're amazing. And like, yeah, the reminders to drink and the reminders to have a fan on and stuff, it's like so little, but it definitely, like, when it popped up, was like, oh shoot, yeah, like I should like turn the fan up a little bit. I'm getting a little bit warm, but also like you feel like you've accomplished something at the end of it, and they're not that long, so you know that you're not like putting too much strain on yourself, especially in the third trimester when you're like, well, I mean, the first trimester I feel like is the hardest for me both times around. But yeah, I loved those workouts.
I think that's the misconception though, isn't it? That the first trimester is the easy bit somehow. And when you're heavily pregnant, you're not going to be able to do any exercise. But I think we're probably all nodding with that, because actually the first trimester is when you just feel horrendous.
Yeah, you feel horrendous, but also you're so anxious because that's like such an important time for the growing baby inside of you, and like all of the things you're eating and doing, and you're just always thinking, am I making a mistake today? Am I harming the baby? And once you get past that first trimester, that feeling doesn't go away completely, but it got way less, and you start feeling more confident in yourself. You don't feel as crap, which helps. And you know that, with every scan that you get and every week that goes by, you're a bit closer to having a more robust baby that's going well. So yeah, I think that was a big part of it for me, was getting through that first trimester. And especially because of having a bit of struggles beforehand, I was really like trying to be so perfect, which, that's an athlete thing as well, which can sometimes be a hindrance and a drain on yourself when you're trying to be perfect.
Definitely. Now, I haven't prepped you at all for this because I forgot, quite simply. But has anyone got any funny Zwift fails or just general postpartum fails? My one that I don't know why I think this is hilarious now, because it literally made me cry my eyes out at the time. But it was the first day I'd gone back to work after having my first daughter, Mila. And kind of, you all know what it's like. You're meticulously planning to do a day's work to be able to feed and keep the baby alive and have somebody to support you do that. And so she had come along with my partner to my first presenting job. And I had basically stayed up most of the night, not only to just, be up with her and feed her, but I'd been expressing milk since the small hours, and I'd got everything in place, and I'd managed to do my hair and makeup. And I was like, this is going well. This is great. I'm nailing this. And then I elbowed over the expressed breast milk that was the only thing that was going to keep her fed, because she was exclusively breastfed. And I was in a hotel room, quite a nice hotel room. I don't know if I should admit this. Elvin, the breast milk supply. Don't know why I hadn't put the lid on it. And it basically was still in the thing from the breast pump, and it went everywhere. You wouldn't believe how far it went, like up the wall. And so I'm on my hands and knees cleaning up milk off the wall and the floor and the cot that we'd borrowed. And it was just absolutely everywhere. And then I was like, right, I need to leave to be on a live interview in about 10 minutes, and I have no milk. So yeah, I won't bore you with how we got through the rest of the day, but it was that moment where I was like, I honestly don't know whether to laugh or cry at this.
That's like the saying, don't cry over spilled milk unless it's breast milk, and then you can absolutely cry.
Yep, I would have cried.
Ride on.
I can follow that up with a fail from like 2 nights ago. So Adia, my new baby, who's almost a month old, she is doing this really awesome thing where she only poops when you take her diaper off. The feeling of air on your butt, which was not a thing with the firstborn. So I am like well out of my depth with this current situation. But the first time it happened was a couple of nights ago. It was middle of the night. It was like 2 a.m. I was like just fighting to stay awake and try to change her diaper and feed her and everything. So it was the middle of the night and I was changing her diaper, and I took off the one diaper and didn't immediately put the second diaper down. And she had like explosive newborn poop, which is like yellow, like mustardy, for those who don't know. And it just went like literally all over the bed. Every single sheet was covered in it. She was covered in it. I was covered in it. And I was sitting there. It was 2 a.m. and my husband's sleeping in another room because he's a professional athlete. And I was just like, well, shoot.
Oh, shoot.
Pun intended.
to poop awake. But Abby, I need to let you all go, but I have to just say, despite all the having to do the laundry in the small hours and the poop, you've already got back on Zwift.
Yeah, this is probably against doctor's orders. And I did actually ask my midwife at my 3 week check. I was like, so can I ride the bike? And she was like, no. And I was like, well, but you don't understand. I was able to ride the trainer until my due date. And then after my due date, I probably could have kept going, but I was like, I feel like I've checked this off and like, I felt pretty good still. And I was like, I'm just going to stop for now. But I was able to do that. And I was like, I feel like the rules don't apply to me. But also
classic athlete move.
Also, postpartum depression is a thing that I dealt with the first one a lot. And with the second one, with Lila, we were living in Girona in Spain. So the weather was quite nice and she was born in May. And so I was able to, after a week of rest, I was able to walk outside with her, and go on long walks outside. But we live in Andorra now in January and it's cold and I'm exclusively breastfeeding. So I can't exactly like when she gets hungry on a walk, like whip her out and feed her, outside. So I can feel the tears are coming a little thick and fast lately. So I was like, I just need to hop on the bike. I'll do 30 minutes under 100 watts. I'm not like pushing it at all because it's definitely not something that you should do. When like, yeah, I think like waiting 6 weeks to exercise is there for a reason, but I was like, okay, mentally, I really need 30 minutes. So I've just hopped on Zwift like 2 or 3 times post 3 weeks, just to move a little bit and just to kind of pass the baby off to my mom, who thank the Lord is here with us for 2 months after the baby's born. Pass the baby to my mom and just have that a little bit of time to myself. No goals, no fitness, no nothing. Just to be able to, I don't know, feel a little bit sane for a minute. You can just kind of get your body moving and get a little bit of turnover in the legs. And like, I feel like the mental benefits of it outweigh the whatever slight strain I might be putting on my unhealed uterus.
What a note to end on, Abby. I've just had my stomach stitched back together after surgery, but I'm sure the rules don't apply to me either. So let's just crack on. But thank you so much. A pleasure as always. Thanks for coming on the Zwiftcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Right on.
Kate, those three women are just an absolute force of nature, especially collectively when everyone gets together. And I feel so privileged to just be in their company, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they are phenomenal. I've been a diehard listener for years of their pod, and to see them all take this journey, this motherhood journey, and then come back to bikes, and for Zwift to be a tool to help them do that, and for them to be such a huge part of the conversation around all of this incredible momentum in women's cycling. They are the experts, and I look forward to the pod every week, and I'm so happy that I get to see them on Zwift as well.
It's amazing, isn't it? We've stolen them all from their podcast onto our podcast, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and I will, I'm sure you've already given a good shout out, but that is the source for all things on the inside of the women's pro cycling scene. That pod is just incredible. And it's just fun. You feel like you're hanging out in their living room, chatting with them about the latest race, and it's my go-to every Tuesday.
It really is, isn't it? And I'm always very privileged when I get to hop over as a guest on there. But I think what's also brilliant is the collective honesty. I feel like we've all tried to be honest about the fact it's not easy to have a baby, to come back to work, but actually having this honesty, this transparency, and their voices coming back, and Gracie reporting at the heights that she does in TV coverage, everybody in different ways, whether that's podcast or TV or written work, actually lending their voice to come back to this sport, because it is important to have these voices.
Yeah, and they're just superstars. You just get a glimpse of the energy, the enthusiasm, the incredible power of these women. I know at times for all of them to be on the pod at the same hour, with young children is incredible, and they manage their time so well. They manage their energy so well. They're wonderful contributors to the sport, and they're wonderful, moms and family members. So I love that they get to, keep up their bike dreams and keep moving on Zwift, and it fits into their busy schedules. They're such incredible women.
Well, it is, of course, Women's History Month, and this is one very close to all of our hearts here. But Kate, especially you in your role at Zwift.
Yeah, I love Women's History Month. I'm a firm believer of celebrating women every day of the year. But, if we want to put a spotlight on women in March, it's also my birthday month. So let's do it.
Well, the theme for Women's History Month in 2025 is moving forward together, women educating and inspiring generations. Now, this theme celebrates women who have dedicated their lives to education, mentorship, and leadership. And I think this is particularly relevant to have a conversation on with you, Kate, because for me and Dave, in our broadcasting capacity, we had so many people for so many years asking us, when is the Women's Tour de France happening on the calendar? And of course, for many, many years, it just didn't exist. We had to tell newcomers to the sport that we didn't have a Tour de France coming up for women to race. And of course, we now do. And that has happened happily with Zwift in the last couple of years. And it's just been huge.
Yeah, it's just that ripple effect, that visibility finally at the highest level of the sport has just created so much inspiration, so much opportunity. It's just been a beautiful, here my dog just jumped in the scene.
We've got a friend joining us.
Yeah, he gets really excited about Watch the Femmes. It's been so exciting to see women be elevated on all levels of the sport, to be part of this larger conversation in the rise and opportunity around women's sports. And I'm very proud of Zwift and our role as one of the instigators.
And of course, I've nodded to the whole Watch the Femmes movement. This is the first of two very special listen along podcast rides. For anyone that hasn't really learned about the premise of Watch the Femmes, what is happening collectively in the bigger picture across the calendar?
So Watch the Femme is such an exciting campaign. We started out, when we launched this partnership with the title sponsor of Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift and Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift. And the message was simple: watch the Femme, like show up, tune in, see what's going on. And now we're 4 years in, and that Watch the Femme really means engage and do what you can in your world, in your scene, to elevate women's cycling, whether that's tuning into a race, whether that's following riders on social, whether that's joining a local group ride, organizing a local group ride, organizing a club. We can all play a part in the elevation of women's cycling. And that's this year, especially Watch the Femme is something that we want everybody to participate in.
Kate, I saw a really exciting announcement about L'Etape de Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, and I think this is really exactly what you're talking about, building out from it being an awesome event to now being inclusive and anybody can go do it. Can you give us some details on what to look forward to?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. So August 2nd is the first official L'Etape de Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. And this is an opportunity. It's a sportive. The L'Etape is one of the biggest sportives worldwide. It happens at the men's race every year. That men's race, L'Etape, is about 7% women. The L'Etape du Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, we're going to be doing a huge push to get more women there. We want women to come out to ride stage 8 of the race. You will ride the last, I don't quote me on the kilometers, but it's over 100K. There's 2 different distances. And you get to ride the event, like the day of the race, and then get up to the top of the gorgeous Col de Madeleine and watch the Femme. And you get to watch the racers in what's going to be an absolutely electric stage. We've already seen the signups for this event. It's well over 30% women. So we are going to be there, with just bells and whistles, very excited. Everybody that does the event gets a gorgeous Watch the Femme jersey from Santini. It's going to be a sea of Watch the Femme colors and enthusiasm, and just a great way that this race inspires participation. And along those lines, Dave, I'm excited about the Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift just coming up next. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that next, but there's also a challenge there, the sportive, on the day of the women's race. And we're also doing a big push to get more women to that.
When you see the women taking advantage of this opportunity that's been offered by these high-profile events, I think Alison Jackson and her win at Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift was maybe the best example of how athletes need events, events need athletes, and we all need a hero, right? And I feel like this is the first time the women are being given that opportunity. Am I on to something with that, Kate?
Absolutely. It feels like we're creating a more welcoming environment, a more fun environment, a more engaging environment for women to not only, to not only show up and watch, but to participate and to join these bigger events, to be a part of the scene. These scenes have been going on for 100 years. It's so exciting to see women now showing up, feeling like they belong there.
It sounds like some additional events are being added around Roubaix as well.
Yeah, so Paris-Roubaix weekend is spectacular. There is a long-running challenge, the Paris-Roubaix Challenge, where you actually ride the cobbles, and it happens on the day of the women's race, the day before the men's race, on Saturday, April 12th. We're excited this year. We want to get more women to that event, because the beauty of that event is that you ride the cobbles and then you end up in the velodrome and you're there to watch the end of the women's race, or a lot of the women's race, because it'll be on big screens. So we're doing a big push with our friends and community and industry partners to bring more women to Roubaix, to the area for the weekend, and make a weekend out of it with your girlfriends and come ride bikes. So we're putting on a Watch the Femme Friday in Lille, which is right next to Roubaix. We'll be doing a morning cafe ride with a local group called the Female Cycling Tribe. And then in the afternoon, we'll have a happy hour with community, industry, media, some super special guests. So excited about that. If you pay attention to Zwift's socials, you can see some more details on that, but everybody is welcome to join. Like I said, a women's ride in the morning and then a happy hour in the afternoon, just to kick off the weekend right.
Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing. I'm just buzzing listening into everything we're anticipating this season. And Dave mentioned the victory of Alison Jackson. And I just really feel that we've had such a distinctly different story for every edition of Paris-Roubaix Femmes Avec Zwift so far. And I was actually recently talking to Pfeiffer Georgie, although not the win, everybody saw what it meant for her to get on that podium. And we were laughing just about that moment where she didn't know if she had taken third. And everyone was like, the look on your face. And then, of course, just the absolute elation when she found out she had actually taken the third spot in that sprint, in that style. What are you anticipating for this edition of the race? It's going to be yet another absolute corker, isn't it?
Oh, this is going to be so good. The best part about Paris-Roubaix Femmes Avec Zwift is that anything can happen. And we've seen it over the years, we've seen a breakaway with a solo breakaway, with like 100K to go. We've seen the 5 top riders come into the velodrome together for a one-up sprint. And we've seen, the domestique of all domestiques take a win and then dance, in the velodrome after her incredible win that year with Ali Jackson. This is just an absolutely unmissable race because anything can happen. There's so many factors. The best talent in the world is going to be there. We have all these new shakeups in the Women's World Tour, so new team dynamics. I cannot wait. I'm excited to see, people like Chloe Dygert. What can Chloe Dygert do on a course like that? It's going to be thrilling.
I want to throw a name at you then. I'm getting excited myself, Rebecca, once you start talking about the racing. But, Kate, when you went back to last summer in August, PFP, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, talked about wanting to move over to road racing because of Tour de France Femmes Avec Zwift and how significant that's what you call changing the landscape of sport. How about she comes and wins Roubaix? I mean, I believe at one time she was the mountain bike, cyclocross, and road world champion all at the same period. No one's done that, men or women, outside of her. That'd be an exciting way to introduce yourself to road cycling.
Oh, my goodness. Pauline back in the peloton is the best. She is a phenom. We all know her technical skills, her power, she's a multidisciplined force. So I can't wait to see what she can do. And then we've got Anna van der Breggen back. We got one of the greatest of all time back in the peloton. So I imagine there's a good chance that she'll be racing as well. It's so exciting to see that the sport has been elevated to such an extent that literally women coming out of retirement and coming back because they want a piece of this pie and they deserve it. And I can't wait to see how that shakes up the action and the drama this year.
Kate, think about how much the sport has changed since Anna retired versus now. Did she talk to you at all about the reason why she wanted to come back?
I have not talked to her directly, and I can't wait till I first see her this season. We've heard her say that she wants to come back and play a role, that she doesn't have, super lofty ambitions. It's more about just wanting to be a part of this current scene. But we all know Anna is, she's a winner. So she doesn't come back to be pack fodder. So she wouldn't come back. She knows very intimately the numbers that the peloton is putting out these days, the numbers that the best of the peloton are putting out these days. So she wouldn't jump back in unless she felt like she could do some damage and she could contribute to some big wins, that she could come back and, and just make a splash this year. So I cannot wait to see. She's got an incredible team around her. But the dynamics, it was so cool to see the last race, Marlon Reusser, Anna van der Breggen, and Demi Vollering all in different kits.
Yeah, I cannot wait for the tour this year. Like you touched upon there, Kate, the different dynamic, people that aren't teammates anymore, people that aren't DSs of certain riders anymore. Oh my God, it's going to be fireworks, isn't it?
It is. I love it. It's been so much fun. Even the first race already, the first couple of races, we've seen some of that drama unfolding, and it's going to be a good season.
Ride on.
Kate, on that note, I'm going to let you go. You're a very busy woman. Thanks so much for joining us again on the Zwiftcast.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. Ride on.
And just like that, that is all we've got time for, but we will be back again in 2 weeks with the second of our 2 special episodes to mark and celebrate Women's History Month. If you haven't already, you'll be able to listen along with our podcast rides and discover that exclusive Watch the Fam unlock. And we'll drop all of the information into the show notes that you need to get involved with everything we've talked about in the episode. In the meantime, from me, Kate, Dave, and the whole team behind the scenes, it's bye-bye for now.